things that happened from Jamestown, right up through, the riots in the 60s, right up through the blackface thing in Virginia.
Right.
When you do not have these references for the young people, what do you expect?
Right, let alone the Trail of Tears
Right.
and things like that they
Exactly.
don't talk about. And the Pilgrims were all settlers. Settlers, it sounds so nice, the language. They were settlers.
And they had this nice meal with the Native
Yes.
Americans, and yes,
Yeah.
everything was great. And
It was beautiful the way they make it sound. Settlers, it makes it very easy, as if the land was not settled.
Right.
They don't. Settlers sounds better than murderers. So we're just gonna go ahead and say it.
Slaughterers.
And the sad thing is, even when you look at what we have in the White House now here is a country that we have a tremendous country of immigrants, and now a country founded by immigrants, or not founded by immigrants, but a country full of immigrants is now saying to this younger generation that immigrants are a bad thing.
And then they get mad at us when we try to say, no, we want to be diverse. And it's like, okay, I think that this is the weird gap that's happening. I think that we are at this point where it almost seems like there is this immense pressure on us to kind of pull things together. And they always talk about how we are the future. We're stepping into this role in this country where eventually a lot of these decisions are going to be up to us, but it's almost like the things that we want to see happen are not up to us. So it's like, how are we supposed to step into the role of making a difference in this country and be expected to, okay, you're a millennial, then you need to have XYZ in order to position yourself to take on this role of eventually being in a leadership position, because eventually we're going to be the ones who are older. We're going to be the ones who are in office. But it's like the changes that we want to see are left up to these people who are like 80 years old, and they don't even want to see the changes that we want to see. So it's almost like we're being forced to live in this weird gap. Like we are consistently becoming more diverse. We want to see that. We want to see everybody represented on media and social media and all this kind of stuff, but yet the people who are in charge of the country don't want to see that. So it's a really interesting gap, and that's why I kind of get frustrated when it's like, oh, millennials don't know how to do anything. But it's like, okay, you guys used to have home ec. You guys used to have co-op programs. You guys used to have all these resources that are no longer available to us. So it's like, for example, you gave the example earlier about cursive writing. We don't even really write anymore. We tweet, we text. If we need to verify something, we use our fingerprints. Because since cursive is not being taught to us anymore, we come up with technological advances. So it's like, all right, cursive isn't being taught in the schools anymore. Nobody really uses signatures anymore. So we're about to make systems where you can use your fingerprint. You can use your eyes. You can do this. You can do that. So it's almost like we're trying to come up with ways to ease these learning gaps, if you will. But I just want to, I'm just curious to see what you guys think about this little gap. It's really interesting to me.
Well, I think millennials, and in generations that come after us, and I think Chief, we're kind of Chief and I are kind of a bridge generation,
Right.
where we've kind of got one foot planted in history and part of that history, and then the other foot is planted over,
the
stepping on the
future.
horizon in this technological stuff.
Right.
And we see the
I didn't know where you
technological
going with that one.
advances, and just like everything else, it's almost like when back, I'm going to really date myself now.
Uh-oh.
Back in the day where there was cassette tapes, and you would have and Chief would know, you have a cassette tape, someone would mix an original, and then you copy it, and then you copy it, and each time, each tape that's further away from the original, the less the sound quality.
That's where you heard the hiss.
Right. It wasn't that great. And kind of the same thing as we move further and further from the struggle from the civil rights. Here we are now 400 years away from the first slaves coming over. You know, each generation that we move from that's removed from that, the farther that you know is from their thought process.
Right.
I think we had, you know, our parents. If our parents weren't marching, then we knew somebody. They knew somebody who was marching.
Right.
So it was while we didn't necessarily march in those marches where you could get hurt. I remember being in marches, you know, where they weren't really beating anybody up, but it was still the whole thought about that. I was, you know, kind of indoctrinated that way. My father was in the march, you know, you remember multiple marches.
That's right.
That they had at different times when all the clergy marched in Selma the second day after the Bloody Sunday, when they came down the next day in March. He was part of that. So, you know, you hear that. And another thing that doesn't happen, millennials are so damn busy
yes.
all the time and so overscheduled. When's the last time they sat down and ate dinner with the family or not just, and it may not be a whole family, you know, mother, for whatever the family is for them. When's the last time that they sat down and shared things across generations about what's going on in your day? What's, you know, I would see what happened in mom and dad's day, and kind of get a feel for what they deal with, what was going on. And, you know, you learn about social cues and things like that. And now, you know, millennials have access to all the information in the world. All you got to do is ask Alexa, Google it, ask Siri something, as I say, you know, Snapchat, tweet, face, twizzle, pop, whatever. You know, you can get whatever it is. Look, Alexa's behind me in the back going, "What did you say? What did you say?"
I know you didn't say that.
Yeah. So, you know, you've got access to the information. Do you want to do it? Do you want to learn about it? Do you know, some of it is you got to kind of take on your own stuff too. You know, something's out there, but you got to have an initiative to step out there too. Yeah, we've been derelict in some of our duties too, by not passing things on, by trying to make things easier for millennials, and that kind of stuff breeds folks who think like Jesse and stuff like that.
Well, you're right, and
it does.
And you know, the other thing,
it's a vacuum,
right? And it's kind of a two-headed coin, because think about it, Thin Man. I'm glad you talked about some of the technology that was out when you were young. But
yeah, 2 tin cans in a string.
That's right. That's right. But
a two-way pager.
Exactly. Now think about it. When we were coming up, and calculators were really making an inroad. Remember, that's how come you all don't know algebra and geometry, because you have these calculators, and no way, no calculators allowed in the room. And so now, I know when Amber was Ambezi was in high school and so forth, you were required to buy a calculator for your classes. But not only that, but the whole technology generation has kind of made us impatient. So I need my information right now. This is the only way that I'll take it. This is the only way I'll send it. And so there's really not a lot of incentive when you look at how free-flowing information is to be patient or to learn about certain things, because like you said, I can Google, about Plato and Aristotle. I don't have to read a book anymore. I don't have to go to the library and learn the Dewey Decimal System and, all those types of things. And so I think that when you combine the fact that we are now in an instant gratification age, along with the fact that there are things missing from school curricula and textbooks, and you put all that in a bag and shake it up, this is what is breeding some of the issues that I think Ambezi is referring to.
So, also, let's talk about the popular subject of what happens when we graduate college. Because the one thing that I can say is that your generation pushed education on us, which is great. We are college bound. We're out here. It's expensive. It's very, very expensive. I mean, the student debt is crazy. But
so is parent debt.
And but what I just remember my mom telling me this story of when she was coming out of college, she was able to get a co-op program with the department that she ended up working for, And they basically trained her up so that she could move up in the ranks. She had a lot of knowledge. She did great in her career. But it's like nowadays, we get our degree, we get out of school, and now it's like, oh, you don't have the experience to do this, and you don't have the experience to do that. And a lot of these little transitional, there's internships, but a lot of these quote-unquote co-op programs really don't exist anymore. So I think that's kind of a weird thing, too, because I really think that we want to dive into some of these, I'm not going to say bigger positions, because with any industry, you have to work your way up. But I think we really do want to get our foot in the door with a lot of these, especially political industries and stuff like that. But, we're consistently being told that we don't have the experience to do so.
I think one example of where you see what's the saying? Necessity is the mother of invention.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I think, if we look at hip hop,
mm-hmm.
And how it blew up, hip hop. If you go back in the time, it started in the late 70s, early 80s, but when it really started to blow up, that was right around the time when they started taking arts and music classes out of the school curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And when they did that, there were, people weren't playing instruments anymore. You didn't have a lot of bands coming out playing. If you look now, you don't have a lot of bands. You have a lot of DJs.
Right.
You have a few bands who can play, but you got a lot of DJs that are just taking music that was already made and making music from that. That's an instance where, you take lemons and make lemonade.
Right.
And that's thinking outside of the box. And I think that's some of the things too that millennials have. It's like the old folks have the information, but the millennials have the access.
Right.
And how to access the information. So there's got to be that marriage. You can't do it without communicating. So millennials talk to some old folks. Old folks talk to some millennials.
And I think that's really like the best thing moving forward, because we could sit here and talk all day about all the things that are wrong and stuff, but I think the main thing that I really want to bring awareness to is moving forward, there definitely does have to be that marriage. A lot of these outdated companies who are having trouble reaching new customers and reaching certain goals, they could really use our help. We are the face of technology, social media, marketing, all that kind of stuff. And I remember a time where when it came to, for example, singers or actors, you used to have to go to a PR firm and all this stuff. Now you can market yourself. We've basically mastered that. And I think that's one of the great things that has come out of this. We've kind of stepped out of the box to do stuff like that. We've learned how to make money through social media. All the technology that's coming out is amazing. But I think that the only difference between now and the times back when you guys were growing up is that it's kind of like what you said. Like, your generation has like 1 foot in the past because you guys were there and 1 foot in the future. So you guys are kind of able to tie them together. And I think that's what we need to see more of. I think we need to see more brands and companies taking advantage of us without hiring us and putting us in a box. Like, oh, yeah, we have this 20-year-old, 21-year-old, 22, 23, 24-year-old. Thanks for being here. Look at our social media and then sit in the room. Like, there's so many ways that we can utilize each other. So what do you guys think are some good ways to do that?
With them bad, I'll let you jump on that one. I think he's having some technical difficulty.
I'm here.
Okay.
There I am. Yeah. See. I need a millennial to come tell me what the hell is going on with my microphone.
What are you doing? The pay-as-you-go thing?
Yeah. But you communicate. Nothing beats communication.
Right.
I think no matter how new things get, when communication breaks down, civilization breaks down. If you want to keep people, going against one another, keep them from communicating with one another.
Right.
And I think that's where we get when people sit down and talk to one another. Someone had just put up it was a quote attributed at least to to Dave Chappelle. And it was a pretty decent quote. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I think that's decent. What happens there too? He said our culture has accepted